Hey, this is the World Advice Channel too. What I want to talk about today is the topic of how to not have low self-esteem. So when it comes to this channel, since this is a channel that is focused on creating a new alternative left movement, so we can have a new left wing movement versus the left wing we have at this period of time to fight against the racist conservatives on the right, you know, um, I also, of course, know that aside from politics, a lot of my viewers, obviously, like every human being, have issues that they are going through. Some of them might have the issues that I have that I'm discussing for this new part of my channel where I give life advice tips for people directly. Some of them might not, but either way, some of them do have these things because most people have one of these things or not that I'll be discussing for life advice uh, videos, at least direct life advice videos, and that is what I'm going to be discussing today. Is a topic of how to not have low self-esteem. Okay, that is what I'm going to be discussing today as one of my direct advice tips for my subscribers. Okay, so now I mentioned that, let's get started. So when it comes to the topic of how to not have low self-esteem, how to not feel like you are the world's biggest loser or at least close to one of the world's biggest losers, the first thing I obviously mention is that there is no perfect way to completely have completely high self-esteem. But at the same time, where things get interesting for the second point is to keep in mind there's definitely a way that you can at least prevent yourself from having low self-esteem. So you at least have a decent level of self-esteem. And what exactly is this best way of not having low self-esteem? Well, the best way to avoid having low self-esteem is simply to realize that you are not the world's biggest loser, okay? Or the runner up for the world's biggest loser. Because the truth of the matter is, for anyone in this world, okay, who is trying, and I know it's a lot of people who tend to have low self esteem, tend to have certain personality types and characteristics that kind of show who they are as a person, okay? The truth of the matter is, as long as you're trying, specifically people who tend to have low self esteem, I tend to notice are usually very strong, deep thinking, you know, as well as, you know, very even you can say perfectionist type people. One thing I can definitely say for those type of people, who of course as a result of the characteristics they tend to have, are people who are at least trying, is to realize instantaneously you from that the get go, if you are trying this world, you are not the world's biggest loser, okay? That is the truth of the matter. Because in this day and age, especially with the internet, since we can kind of see all the stupid things people are doing nowadays, as well as all of the poor choices, morally speaking, people make, it is so easy nowadays to just realize you are not a loser, the world's biggest loser, compared to what the media, or not even the media, just people in general, society would have you believe, okay? And let me go into further detail explaining what exactly I mean here. Because when it comes to this world we live in today, there are so many stupid things, even just me on a day to day basis in my local area where I live in Canada, that I can know that anyone in the world, not even just me, but anyone in the world who's actually takes life seriously would not do. I literally every day, or at least almost every day, see people do the dumbest shit, okay? Whether it could be walking across the street, looking on their phone while they're doing their walk across the street, literally running across a main road. It's not even like a small road. They're literally running across the main road. Some of them are jaywalking, so they're literally walking while there's a busy intersection going on or a busy travel situation going on as cars are moving. For crying out loud, let alone some even have the audacity to walk across a main road, okay, while they're looking on their phone. Like how do you get dumber than that? Like that's an example of what I'm trying to get across here. There are so many people, especially with this new generation known as Gen Z, who do such stupid shit. Like I can literally just look at them instantaneously and say, I would never do anything this stupid. And the thing is, there are so many people who are doing these things. I'm referring to right now, and that's not even getting into the main thing I want to discuss, which of course is the internet. And all the stupid stuff you see on the internet. There are so many people on the internet. I see do the dumbest things imaginable. Okay, let alone not just dumb things like in the moment, but dumb life choices. Okay, there are people who literally believe, you know, that they can commit crimes and publish it online for the whole world to see, you know, by posting it on Facebook or Twitter or whatnot, and I actually believe they're not going to get caught. There's people who do like things that are just extremely stupid, like just the dumbest things, even aside from the example I gave just now about like them committing crimes. There's people who, you know, who, for example, just instantaneously, for example, have the worst takes imaginable for things. Like some people literally think that because they have a black person as like, you know, a villain for a movie that it's racist, so in other words, bad takes on things. There's people who can't even spell properly when they're writing things. But even aside from that trivial point I just gave just now, there's just people doing stupid things. There's people who have themselves shot just to see how painful it is. There's people who just, like for example, like another example I can obviously think off the top of my head might be, they are like recording themselves while like they are in their room and they just say every and anything that comes to their mind and they're not even thinking, let alone the immoral stuff, which of course morality relates to willpower and self strength. There's so many people who do like the most immoral things. There's people who, for example, degrade themselves sexually, um, online. Like obviously, most obvious one would be, you know, like doing porn, or if not porn, like direct porn, like deliberately doing sex acts, or do OnlyFans, which pretty much is porn. Anyway, there's so many people who do things. Whether it comes down to the two main things that people who tend to have low self-esteem, um, tend to be concerned about, whether it comes down to um, willpower, pretty much like how much willpower you have to not do immoral things, or secondly, intelligence level. Those two main things people who tend to have low self-esteem, I've noticed, they tend to be the most concerned about. There's so many people online who do those dumb things all the time, and it's a bunch of people. It's not even a small percentage. It's a bunch of people who do those things. So when you see things like that, it is like, and it's people, like these are real people. Like this is not like some bullshit like computer AI generated stuff. No, these are real people in a majority of cases. And there's videos going years back before AI even became popular, like it is now with like ChatGPT. So what I'm trying to say here is, when you see people do things like that, just remember, if you wouldn't do something that stupid, okay, just remember, you are not the world's biggest loser. Okay, there are so many people who do that. Even like the OnlyFans example, there's woman, bare women who do OnlyFans. Okay, you know things like that. And there's bare people as well who commit crimes online and expect they're not going to get caught. Like when you see people do things like that, just remember, if you can see that there's people who make worse life choices than you, then you are not the world's biggest loser. So why do you feel so bad about yourself? And that's a question I have for people who have low self-esteem. If you see so many people do this stuff, why do you feel like you are less than other people, or most people, or even everyone for that matter? Because as long as you wouldn't do those things that are so stupid, then just remember, you are not the world's biggest loser. Especially when you take into consideration that even a majority of people do things that are kind of dumb, and in all honesty anyway. Have you seen, how bad the education system is nowadays? So that's what I'm trying to say here. If these things are going on, and you see so many people doing this dumbass stuff that's become so commonplace it's ridiculous, why do you feel like you are less than other people. Because the simple answer is, as long as you're trying, you are not less than other people. And just remember that, okay? And this is part one of my series about this. I'll eventually do another part two for this, where I explain it further detail. But truth of the matter is, you are not less than other people. And this is what I refer to as having something known as averages. Okay, there's something known as an average level of intelligence. Okay, yes, it might not be the greatest to say you're the most amazing thing, or at least you might not know it, not unless you try, but at least knowing that you're at least at an average level of intelligence, and abilities for that matter, is at least the most important thing to keep in mind, okay? Especially with this world we live in nowadays, it's so easy to literally debunk the stuff that these people say. So anyway, this is my video. This is part one of my series. I hope you watch the whole series, and this is all the same to be put out. So bye.